Hello, everyone. Welcome to GDC Substance Days. Yeah. All right. Okay, it's time to kick this off. So we're so glad that you guys are all here with us. And, coming to GDC, it's such a special time, and for the Substance team, it's a conference that really, it has a special place in our heart because, going back to the beginning, game development has always been one of the things that really helped kickstart Substance. It's something that we've always really focused on. So being here at GDC is always a special time for us, and we're so glad that you guys are all here with us. We've got a really, really great showcase for the rest of the day, so lots of cool stuff. We'll get to that in a second. But one of the things I want to say, too, is we have a lot of the Substance team members here with us. So throughout the week, you'll be able to hang out and talk, and again, we'll just talk shop and talk about 3D, which is great. So one thing I do want to do is, here in the room, we do have several of our Substance developers and product managers, so I know this is embarrassing for you, but if you don't mind, just stand up really quick. I can see Baptiste, he's right there. Substance Sampler, Nicholas Cateau, there he is. Here we go. Valeria, you're not standing up, Baptiste. Valeria is right here in the front. She's got something for us. But anyways, shout out to the developers. One of the things that's awesome about Substance is that, especially something that I've still have never gotten over after all these years, is like you get to work with like wizards and magicians all day long. So it's pretty cool. So anyways, also to all the dev team back in the offices who are watching, can't be here, we love you. Thank you so much for everything that you do. One last thing I want to say as well, too, Seb Duguy is here, the legendary, the man, so without him, none of us would be here doing any of this. So anyways, just shout out to Seb. I know he can't be in here right this minute, but shout out to him. One funny thing in French, the way they say, I'm probably saying it wrong, but they say Duguy, but in the US, we like to say de guy, as in he is the guy. So anyways, that's kind of how we like to think of him. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to start off first is kind of like, it's tradition for us as we jump into the community showcase. So the community is always just super near and dear to our heart. And, one of the things I do want to mention that's really cool about this showcase is, we have this Slack channel back at the office. And a lot of the devs and those of us on the art teams, we just love to go out and look at your artwork and the things that you create with the tools. And we go in and we just, we're constantly just collecting, hey, did you see this? Check this out. And it becomes like a really uplifting place, especially, throughout the workday. Maybe things aren't going so good. It's nice just to jump into that channel and just look at the beautiful artworks that the community is creating. And it also is very special to the devs because it really helps give them motivation, and they feel like, oh, it's really important for them to see like what it is that they're creating, and the work that you do is super, super motivating. So with that said, I just want to run through a couple of these curated examples that we had found. Now, I need to apologize up front. I'm probably going to mispronounce some names here. But I will say, being someone who is from Kentucky, I can't really speak English very well anyway, so let's blame it on that. Okay, so let's come over here and take a look at one of our first examples. So this is an artwork by Sergi, and you can see here that this is what he calls the Book of Gears. Lots of amazing detail here. This is a little video. We'll let it play for a second so you can really see what all of the textural work and things that he's put into this. So super amazing piece. Moving on to the next piece of artwork here. This is a piece of artwork by Helena Hansen. There was a concept for this was created by Oid, and the environment just took under 2 months for this to be created. So very beautiful work. So next up, we have a dwarf, and so this was reimagined by Juan Hernandez, and the design was by Simon Lentz. Okay, so next up we have a piece of artwork. This here is by Adrian Ruse. And so, again, this is called Maxon. This is something he's been working on for like over a year, and here you can see just a lot of the great detail that's put into this piece here. And the idea is he's a 3D graphic artist enthusiast with a focus on creating realistic textures. Next up, we have the Eco Beetle. This here is by Ben Keeling. And here we have another example here. So this is medical items. This is by Thibault, and a concept by Olympia Sweetman. Okay, here's an example here. This is The Priestess by Mango. Very beautiful, detailed character work. Next, we have another example here. This is Neo Gang. This is by Ayana Swada. Now, here's another example here. This is an environment modeling reel. This is by Tomo Matsushima. This is really a pretty cool video. This is pretty amazing. This is a 3D CG environment. This was a demo reel for her university graduation project. And you can see the full video on Vimeo here. But you can see this is quite awesome, very expansive 3D environment. Very, very cool. All right, looking at some more examples here. So this was created using Modeler. So the artworks here, this is by Jacob Ulrich. And here is another example of some modeling work here, also done by Jacob. So next up, we have some artworks here by Daniela Trovato. And so these sculptures were created with Substance Modeler as well. And on this next slide, we have another example from Daniela's work. And coming up, we have some more modeler works, a little theme here at the end, because we have some really nice modeler presentation coming here. So this is more artworks by Andre Lang. Now, one of the next things I want to transition to here for our community is what we call the Insanity Awards. So this is something we've been hosting for quite some time. And you know, I think Vincent's in the room. He can talk to you guys about this afterwards. But this kind of came from like internally, us, again, just like I said, the devs and all the different teams looking at your community artwork and finding some examples where we were just like, what is you doing with the Substance graph? This is insane. So we decided to call it Insanity Awards. And what we're seeing here is some of the craziest materials that are created with Substance Designer. And we're going to kick it off with probably the craziest we've ever seen. Let's check this out. Here we have a convolutional neural network in Substance Designer created by Marco Vitali. And so this little video that you can see here is showcasing what this does. Now, Vincent Go, he's here. He's one of our Substance 3D evangelists. So Vincent, on his YouTube channel, check it out. He actually did an interview with Marco about this particular Substance graph. So yeah, you can see where the name comes from. This is insane. This is Insanity Awards. So yeah, this is quite amazing. So let's take a look at a few other examples. Again, all Substance Designer work. So this one here is a Stacked Suitcases by Nikki Marinov. So very, very cool, detailed work there. All right, next up we have the Roman Colosseum. This is all Substance Designer by Pablo Blaines. And here on this last slide, we just have like a collection of just some of our past results of the Substance Designer Insanity Awards, but you can get a quick overview of just all these different artworks. Crazy amazing they are. There's one that I'll call out here really quick, the fully procedural clicker, The Last of Us fan art. This is by Raouf. Raouf is actually an old school algorithmic guy, so he's actually one of the first people I recall meeting when I first was able to join the algorithmic team. So really cool. Thanks, Raouf. You're awesome, man. All right, and again, just a couple other quick examples of some more of those just crazy, insane work. I know the work here by Kem, and you can see on the far right, that's just completely a texture. So you can see him applying the displacement and getting like almost a 3D model just from just some texture displacement from Substance Designer. Pretty crazy. Okay, so the next thing that I want to transition over here to is the Meat Mat contest. So this is Meat Mat 3. So, you know, we introduced Meat Mat contest to quite a while back. It goes all the way back to 2017, and this little guy has just become quite a big deal. He's really gotten to have an ego, so he's demanding a contest for himself. Many times, we're on the third iteration here, he's getting out of hand with it. But this one here, this is a contest that was partnered in partnership with the rookies. And one of the things, I got a video to play here, so the screen looks a little weird, but it's going to be a video. One of the things I want to really mention that's really key to understand about this is all student-driven work. So this contest was only open to students. So everything you're seeing here is student work. As you'll notice, it's quite amazing. Only thing I can say to that, however, we're looking at all the work, we're thinking, wow, this is mind-blowing, this is student work. And it really kind of rang to that whole, I wish I would have paid attention in school, because I could never do anything like this my whole life. So it's that, stay in school. All right, let's take a look at the video. awesome. Yeah, let's give them a huge round of applause. That was just, it's quite amazing, and I can't wait to see where we go with Meet Mat 4. Okay, so coming up, I'm going to announce, again, one of my great friends over here, Jérémie, he's coming up, and he's got a lot of really awesome product announcements. He's got a cool slide, too, so there he is. Product Director, Substance 3D. Welcome, Jérémie. The clicker's now working.
The clicker's working.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wes.
All right.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Wes. Amazing work, again, from the community. It's always a pleasure to, every day, see all that great work coming out of those tools, and you guys, amazing artists. So I'll go into kind of giving you what we call a state of substance, which is just where we are and where we've been until we start talking about where we're going to go next. And last year, we celebrated 20 years of Substance. This is what you see here is the office of Algorithmic back in 2006, I believe. That's the whole office, all the employees. That was, we're basically hosted gracefully in an empty classroom on the campus in France, and that was the office. And this is the team in 2019, which was the last time the whole team gathered together. The Substance team now is about more than 300 people working every day on, of course, updating the tools that we already have and that you use, and building some amazing new apps and experiences that will be coming up next few months, next few years. During these 20 years, our mission has always been to help you create better art, while hopefully having as much fun as possible, at least as much fun as we have building these tools. So we hope to be able to live up to this mission, even if the industry is changing and there's a lot of new things happening in linear technology, and we're going to talk about AI and all those things today. And we're going to share, actually, a little bit of what we're building in that space. Another anniversary that we're celebrating this year is the 10 years of Painter. Painter was released in 2014. Painter was initially released in 2014, and today, to celebrate those 10 years, we're going to show you some of the very early footage and images from Painter that I don't think we've ever seen publicly. First off is some of the very early prototypes that we built with the company called Popcorn FX around particle painting. Particle painting was one of the big features when we launched Substance Painter back in the days, and these are some of the very early kind of testing and prototyping that we were doing about being able to paint multiple channels using particles on models. So again, super early work trying to try what we could do on models and materials, as well as some of very early prototype of the projection painting. So being able to paint and have curves in 3D space, which is kind of the basis of Substance Painter. So all of this was very early work that we were working on in 2012, 2013. At GDC 2013, we actually had a small group of industry veteran in one of the restaurants here in San Francisco, and showed them this in a private event, and they were so excited, and that really gave us motivation to build Painter and release it a year later. Something else I want to show is this, which is the very first mock-up of Painter that we built very early. So it's 100% Photoshop. There's nothing real in here, but that's what we wanted to. That was the vision around Painter, and it feels like we didn't stray too far from it. If you look at Painter today, it's pretty close. Even though there are some things in this mockup that we still have to get in the app. And really, it turns out creating a per-layer, nonlinear, editable history stack with dynamic grouping is not that easy. So hopefully, in the next 10 years, we can actually build that and get to the full vision of Painter. A year later, in 2014, we released Substance Painter 1.0 after beta on Steam. And over the past 10 years, pushed by your feedback and enthusiasm and the reception to Painter, we made this early vision into really an industry standard that now outgrows the game industry, and we see the largest brands in fashion and automotive and design embracing Painter for their texturing needs. Shout out to the Painter team again. They've been doing an amazing job this past 10 years, and there is really a lot of cool stuff coming up for Painter in the next few years as well. So of course we keep on growing, and Painter keeps on growing. Today there is now more than 100 artworks posted on ArtStation every hour using the Substance tools. We keep on innovating. I know people had some doubts a few years back. But since 2019, we released 140 updates to the tools, 500 plus, more than 500 new features. And we keep, as I said, we're now more than 300 people, and we keep bringing in new talents. We're hiring. We have a lot of people from the team here at the show. So if you're interested and curious about joining the team, please come see us. All right, so that was the past. Now let's look at the future. We are building, keep on building the Substance ecosystem as wide as we can. And so some of that ecosystem really relies on how can we standardize 3D data, not only across the Substance tools, but across the industry in general. And so we've been kind of spearheading a few initiatives. One of them is the Alliance for OpenUSD. And so we partner with Pixar and Autodesk, Apple, and NVIDIA to really try to build a consortium around how can we make USD, transform USD from something that was really geared towards very high-end VFX animation production to something that can be used by any industry, any artists across as many apps as possible. And so you can see in the list of people that are part of this alliance today, not only game and software developers, but also hardware and retail giants, all working to converge towards a single open and portable data format. So hopefully at some point, the story about having to convert from one format to another and trying to open the right tool, to open the right file and the right version, all this hopefully one day will go away. That's what we're working towards. So where OpenUSD is about scene data and sharing scene, OpenPBR is another initiative that we're spearheading with Autodesk and the Academy Software Foundation, really about appearance. And today, again, materials, if you create materials for a specific renderer or a specific app, the chances that this material will look the same in another renderer, another app, is very slim. So we're working together with that open source initiative to really converge around one single appearance model so that any material that you would build, let's say, in an Autodesk app or in Blender or in a Substance app, could be portable to any other engine or renderer without any need for conversion or any destruction in the process. And so contributors already include ILM, Epic Games, the Blender Foundation, NVIDIA, a lot more people trying to, again, converge and agree on one single appearance model. The other thing I'll talk about is Firefly and generative AI. So last year, just before GDC, Adobe came out with Firefly, which is our version of generative AI. And we know generative AI is a complex topic, to say the least. And I would say some of the bullet points that are listed here, I'm not going to go through all of them, but is really what we think makes us kind of stand apart from the other solutions out there. And the main one is that all the content that we're training on is our own content. It's content that we license, or public content that has no copyright on it. So that means that it's commercially safe, and it's commercially safe to, it's legally safe, because basically there is no IP in our training sets from anybody else, and so whatever you generate is always original and will not infringe on anybody's IP. Today we'll show our first Firefly-powered features. It's a start, but we really want to make sure that each generative feature, a capability we had, has a meaningful purpose. So beyond the ethical aspect of the data we use for training, we're driven by a few principles, and one of them is that technology is very disruptive. And so we want to make sure that we only really integrate in a way that's helpful to artists and in a way that the quality is good enough to be used in a professional setting and professional workflow. So we're making good progress on many different fronts. You'll see some of that work today. You'll see some of that work coming up, in the next year. We're just really excited with this, all the new opportunities that this will bring to artists and game artists, especially. And finally, we're also building a new development platform. And if you've used the Substance tools and multiple Substance tools in the past, you know that Designer is its own thing, Painter is its own thing, and they look slightly different, and they feel different, and sometimes the rendering is a little different. We've been working for the past 3 years on building a new architecture for all the future apps that we'll be bringing that is built around USD, again, just because it's such a powerful kind of platform to build 3D applications. It's lightweight, it's modular, it works on any platforms, including mobile and XR. It can support custom renderers, which means that we're building our own renderer that supports rasterizing and path tracing that's built for speed and iteration and real-time rendering. But that platform and being on USD allows us also to support eventually other renderers, so that if you use your engine, your own renderer, you can have that directly inside of the Substance applications. And so you'll see some of that work is being integrated in the current apps. And some of the work will be also, of course, the foundation of future applications. On the ecosystem side, Substance today, it's certainly really only as good as the interoperability and the ecosystem around it is. And so the Substance format now today is supported natively or through free plugins in almost 50 3D applications, and the list is growing every year. And if you don't know, the SDK that allows you to develop your own plugin and support the Substance format for your application is actually entirely free. So you can go on our website on the Adobe Developer Console, you can download that, and if you have your own game engine or your own app that you want to have Substance support in, you can actually do it yourself. One of the big efforts that we've done the past 2 years is redevelop our Blender plugin. And so we now have that Blender plugin 2.0. We rebuild the whole architecture. It's really fast. The UX is really great. And so, if you're a Blender user, I invite you to download the plugin. It's a really boost to productivity if you're working with Substance files. We're also always updating all the plugins we have. And so, the Unreal Engine, Unity plugins get updates very often during the year. And again, doing some good, cool improvements, new features for our Unity and Unreal plugins. Something new I want to talk about is what we call Substance Connector. And this is material in sampler. And you'll see here when we're done with the material, we have a little button in the UI that allows you to send to Unreal Engine. And what the connector does is it's an API that allows you to send data, 3D data, from one app to another seamlessly. It can be Substance data. It can be any kind of data. In this case, we're sending an SBSAR to Unreal. But the way we build this is really as kind of a generic purpose way to transfer data between different apps without having to do any export or import or conversions. Right now, we're starting with Sampler, and you'll be able from Sampler to send your data directly to Maya, Blender, Unity, 3ds Max, and Unreal. But that API is open source, and will be available next week, and will be open source. So our eventual goal is to be able to allow those connections between all apps, not just Substance apps and third-party apps, but also between third-party apps, so that, again, having to export and import and go through all this painful process is a thing of the past, and you can just send things from one app to another very quickly. So that's about the ecosystem. Now we're going to dive into the apps themselves. I'm going to start with Substance Designer. Last year, Substance Designer had a bunch of great updates. The main one was allowing you to create splines and paths inside of Designer directly. So we have a set of nodes that allow you to create all these cool artworks and new creative capabilities in Designer. And then something else that we brought that was a long time asked from a lot of you was the portal nodes. And that allows you to basically have an entry and an exit to a portal. And instead of having wires going all through your graph, you can kind of have them hidden in the back and kind of virtualize behind these entry and exit portals. Other recent updates are updates to the frames and being able to typically resize frames automatically, and just makes it a lot easier to work with frames. Being able to use HTML directly in the frame, so you can link potentially to a wiki or somewhere, so that when you share your graph, somebody can have access to more information. Some of the things that we added. And what we're working on for this year is what we call USD lossless support. And what that means is that, again, we're bringing that new platform that I talked about, we're bringing that into Designer. And so Designer will be really sitting on the foundation built on USD, which means that if you're working with USD, and you don't have to, but if you're working with USD, you'll be able to bring USD scene, work on that USD scene, and apply materials, and have that follow along in the pipe, down the pipe, in that same USD scene. So be able to, instead of creating a material, kind of its own silo, you'll be able to have that material be part of that 3D scene in your pipeline. That also means that we're also integrating our new renderer. And that will allow you to replace the current rendering that we have in Designer with a much more modern, pretty, and fast rendering that will allow you to do both rasterization and path tracing. And again, it looks so much better than what you have currently in Designer, so we're pretty excited about that. Another big aspect of the work on Designer is Material X Graph Edition. Until now, Designer has been really about creating textures, right? We call them materials, but just a set of textures. But materials are typically textures plus, the math that go in the shading and how the patterns overlap and the layering. And so to make Designer really a tool that allows you to create these materials from A to Z, we're going to bring Material X in here so that we can not only create textures, but create also all the logic that would go into creating a material. The great thing is Material X is getting a lot of adoptions. It's not as far along as USD, but a lot of apps out there support Material X. And you could imagine that you could create a material in Designer and then bring that whole material in Unreal, for example, and have that live in both places at a time. That's for Designer, and now we're going to switch gears and go talk about Painter. And Valeria, product manager for Painter, is here to talk more about what's coming to Painter.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm really happy to be here to represent the Painter team. And as the Painter team are all avid gamers, well, we're really happy to see the artwork that you produce with Painter. And that kind of, as Wes said, motivates us on a daily basis to produce new tools. And speaking of cool new tools, this is probably a good segue for me to continue on talking about the first tool of, well, many updates that happened in 2023, but the very first one that I want to talk about, because it's the most important one, is the Path tool. You could say it's kind of our Barbenheimer of 2023. Well, this is, inside Barbenheimer. Anyways, the Path tool, well, it's great. If you've already had the pleasure, you know it, and if you didn't have the pleasure, you're probably wondering, why is it so great? Well, I will tell you why. Path tool is great because it combines brush strokes, so anything that is within a brush stroke, any setting, something like a jitter or an alpha, with the editability of, is that a word? With the capability of being edited like fill layers are. So anytime you've done anything with the path, so you've placed your stroke, instead of redrawing the stroke, you can just go back and edit that stroke. So that makes it so much easier to kind of play around with things and move things around on the fly. And speaking of moving, you can kind of move these points as you go along, and you have access to tangents of these points. And it really allows you to have a smoother control over the curve. And if you set up the path that you like, you can even copy-paste its properties to another path, or even across texture sets. That works too. And as we added the path, we've added a couple of resources with the path. As you can see here, the stitching tool. And it has really a variety of different stitches that you can play around with, and you don't even need to change your stroke. All right, moving on to the next feature, which is drag and drop everywhere. And I can tell you our QAs do not know how they lived without it beforehand. And it is also a personal favorite of mine when it comes to quality of life. And these folks here and colleagues at home probably know how much I love ranting about quality of life improvements, quality of life forever. And yeah, so here you can really just grab a resource and drag and drop it onto the mesh from outside Painter before you import it. And you can drop it in the properties panel as well. With that, we made some improvements for layer stack interactions. You can take a resource and drag it into the layer stack, and it will create a new mask or an effect for you. And if you hold Alt, you can even replace the entire mask stack without having to delete the effects one by one. So that's pretty nifty, I'd say. And just like with the Path tool, here I'm demonstrating it with sort of SVG resources and things like that. We've added a couple of new resources like this customizable sticker tool, which is pretty cool because you can really make it peel and be a bit damaged and all that. So that's why I wanted to showcase it in this demo. And I think this video is also a pretty good teaser for me to kind of introduce our upcoming 2024 update, which is due end of April, beginning of May. And if you've noticed, I'm actually not drag and dropping an SVG here. I'm working with an Illustrator file. And this is because Illustrator file support is coming. And now, some of you might not be working with Illustrator very often, but What's really cool about Illustrator files are the artboards. So with artboards, you can keep a variation, like a variant of the same graphic in one file. So afterwards, if you update this file, you just need to update the one file instead of a series of files. Think different stickers that you stick on some kind of game mesh or something like that. So that is a pretty cool thing that you could do with artboards. So moving on to the next feature. We're introducing 3D assets in Painter. So this is a really small quality of life, but a cool one, because it allows you to browse through 3D assets inside Painter, and when you download them, they go directly into the asset panel. So it just avoids going out of Painter, downloading off the website, and then just putting it back in Painter manually. All right, as for the next feature that I want to talk about, well, for the technically minded of you, this might seem way more exciting than for those of us simple folks who just draw textures manually, myself included. But actually, Python Layer Stack API is coming, and this is exciting because, as you can see here, it allows you to change random seed across all layers inside a smart material or any series of layers. And of course, the same logic can be applied to tiling or any other property inside the layer stack. So want to make a button to automatically create a bunch of base layers or pre-populate your stack before getting into the nitty-gritty details? Well, Python Layer Stack is the answer for you. And for the last thing that I'd like to talk about is the text resource. So system fonts will now be available in Painter. And I know we all love Designer dearly, but we can collectively admit that it was kind of tedious to have to go into Designer in order to be able to use a font in Painter, export the resource, et cetera, et cetera. We know how it goes. Well, now you can just drag and drop them from inside the asset panel or from outside with the drag and drop feature, and it will apply like a decal to your mesh. And if you already have something set up, you can just drag and drop it into the layer stack, of course. And what's really cool about it is that you do not even need to retype your text if you want to cycle through a couple of different fonts to try them out. So yeah, that is it for me. But if you have any Painter questions or need advice on your workflow, anything basically, barred throwing rotten tomatoes at me, you can come by the booth starting Wednesday. We're going to be here and happy to answer your questions. And I hope these updates get you as excited to use Painter as I'm excited to see the upcoming Baldur's Gate session. Well, back to you, Wes.
Oh, thank you, Valeria.
Thank you.
Try to speed through them. All right, thank you so much, Valeria. That was super awesome updates. OK, so I want to jump into 3D assets. Hopefully the clicker is going to work. Jérémie's going to try to command that thing. All right, so 3D assets. One of the first things we want to showcase here is this stylization filter. See, Kentucky, I got it out, though. A tool available in Substance Sampler transforms any realistic material from 3D assets into a stylized version of that. It's actually quite cool. I did use this myself on a few things, and it really was nice. Now, an updated version of this filter is coming soon as well with more options and more capabilities with that. The 3D assets team has also been looking at the issues and the difficulty around texturing and creating eyes. And so especially when you're looking to try to create eyes that are more realistic. So with this, there's new content available on the 3D assets platform where you can easily generate an infinite number of eyes full of parameters. You can kind of see that working on the little animated video next to it. So all kinds of different variations you can create to create the eyes. Now, since the last year's GDC, we've upgraded and released 400+ highly detailed and fully parametric photorealistic scans. So each scan allows for easy customization to meet all these kind of design requirements for that. And so the 3D assets library provides like tons of different types of assets. We've got 3D models, there's lights, there's lots of different types of assets that you can use for kit bashing and things like that for building your own standalone assets. So new additions to the library are coming, such as cables, engines, again, allowing creators to be able to kind of piece together to create new, unique models, anything from robots, all the stuff that you would use for design for games and visual effects. So ran through that really quickly because we got some more things for Jérémie to talk about here with the next update on Sampler. Jérémie, back to you.
Thank you, Wes.
Go, Jérémie.
All right, let's get in with Sampler. So Sampler, we've got a ton of updates last year on Sampler. One of the main ones was updating our image to material filter. And what this does is use machine learning to take a single image input and generate all the different channels you need for your material. So there's a few examples, of the current results, which are pretty amazing already. And the research team is working on the next iteration of image to material 3.0 that is even more amazing, even though I can't show it yet. But believe me, that's great. Second feature was up resolution. So being able to go from a 512 texture all the way to a 2048 texture. And be able to generate, again, using machine learning, generates the missing detail to get in higher resolution. So basically, those two together, the image to material plus the up res allows you to go from a single low resolution image as an input to a high resolution full material as an output. Something else that was added recently is our procedural noises and patterns. And typically, all those tools that you use in Designer to just add detail to your texture, these are now also shipped inside of Sampler to make sure that you can, again, from those base material, being able to build more layers and add details on top of it. So this was 2023. Now in 2024, and the main feature that we're adding to Sampler is our first Firefly feature, which is called text to material. And Wes here has a live demo of this that we're going to show right now. Go ahead, Wes.
All right, thank you, Jérémie. All right, so I'm just bringing Sampler up, and yeah, we've decided to brave it. Even after the clicker issues, we're going to try a live demo in front of everyone right here. Okay, so as Jérémie said, we're going to take a look at some of the first kind of foray here into what we're doing with text to texture. So here I have Sampler open, and let's say I want to create a material. I love ground materials, so let's do that. So what I would do is I would just come over here to the generative beta option. I'm going to click this. And so here you get a couple options here where you have generate and history. For the texture type, you can see I'm creating textures, but coming soon, there'll be patterns. And then here I can go and enter in a prompt. Now, I've kind of done this a little bit beforehand just because of our internet connection. It's taking a little while to generate some imageries. But let me show you what this is doing. So right before the keynote, actually I did it right before everybody came in. It was dirt, ground with large rocks. I put something like that. I'm pretty bad at coming up with the prompts, but like I can't, it's hard for me to go from my mind to text. But anyways, it did create something pretty cool for me. So if I look at the results here, you can see there's quite a few results. Now, I've looked at the history of this, and it's retaining the history of everything that I had. So for example, if I just mouse over, you can see that these are some of the base textures that it generated for me. And what's really cool about this is that this is just helping me to get started. So typically what I would do is I would run out to do a Google search or something, try to find some images, which again, I don't really have rights to any of that kind of stuff. Or my preferred method was to go out and try to take a photo. But then there's lots of times when I'm working on something and I don't have time to do those things. So text to texture comes in to kind of help me kind of get the process started. And I'm sorry?
They're seamless too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so you can see here that we have, a couple different options that I did. This one came up, and I thought, okay, this is kind of more of what I was thinking about. And so I'm going to click on this guy, and you can see there's a couple things I can do with this. I can go in and I can actually add this to a layer, which is what we're going to do. But we can also add this to your asset. So for example, say you're generating a few of these textures, and you want to just kind of keep them into your assets for later use, you can do that. But for now, we're going to add this to a layer. And this is going to open up our material creation template called image to material. So we're going to use this. One thing that I'll do just to kind of keep this running a little bit more smooth is just I'm going to keep things at 2K. But one thing that you could do that's really awesome, Jérémie mentioned this, is I could bump this to 4K and then check here this upscale material, and it'll do an intelligent upscale of this material. Now, one other thing that I want to mention about this, here, let me go ahead and just import this guy. And I'll mention this while it's processing. So you see Sampler's doing what it does really well, and quickly, I might add, which is create a base material. It brings the texture in. Now, the texture that it brings in, it's a 2K by 2K texture. So that's really cool. Normally, if I'm doing a Google search, one of the things that kind of gets in the way is like, I'm trying to find a texture that not only looks like I want, but also is it the right resolution? So what the text to texture is going to generate for me is a 2K texture. Now here's the cool part. If I hit T on the keyboard, I can look at my tiling. It's already tiled for me. So again, we'll zoom in. I can move mouse So it's already set the texture to be tiling. So that work's done for me. And that's some of that kind of laborious, boring things that I don't want to do. Yeah, I'm glad the robot handled that for me. So OK, so now I've got my texture. Let's take a look at what's going on here. First things first, I'm going to jump over here to my displacement. Let's increase the height scale just to make sure that we have some really nice displacement on this. Looks good. I'm actually going to close these guys out because I like to see my material full like this. OK. So a couple things let's take a look at. Over here on image to material, you can notice here that with image to material 2, we have our categories. It's already selected ground, which is nice. I have lots of control to go through and kind of choose what I want to create. Image to material has produced for me my maps, my normal, my roughness, my ambient occlusion, my height, all this information. Of course, it's all completely seamlessly tiled already. I don't have to go through that process anymore, which is really nice. So a couple of things I'm going to try to change here. If I just move my slider down, one thing in this particular image, I think the delighting is a little bit too intense, so I'm just going to drop that back. You can see what it's actually doing. If we set it to 0, in this image there was a little bit of shadowing. But in this case, I'm going to leave it because it's kind of faking a little bit of that extra AO that I kind of like. But again, I have control to dial this up and down, which is nice. Let's look at our ambient occlusion. Maybe increase the ambient occlusion strength. That looks pretty good. So now I've got my little detailed image here. So again, we jump back to our base. We're tiling everything. This is working nice and as it needs to. Something else I could do is, maybe this is repeating. I don't like that texture. But of course, I could come over here. And this is when, as the artist, I can get to work. I can use my clone stamp. And let's just do a quick brush size here. And if I wanted to say maybe paint out, say, this rock, I can go in and just kind of paint this guy. Let's see. We'll get something like that. And then here's my sample point, so I can kind of move this around, kind of reposition it. Let's change our threshold slightly. Let's increase a little blur. So again, I'm just kind of going in and just setting, doing a little bit of correction here to the image. OK, so with that said, let's try to mix things up a little bit, and let's add another effect on top of this. So now I'm going to choose to add, let's say, a water effect. And so we'll bring this guy in. Let's take a look at what's going on here in my 3D view. So now we have this procedural effect on top of this base material texture. And if I adjust my water level, let's see, we can kind of we can dial this up and down. We're adding a little bit of water. One thing I think is a little too intense is maybe the edge wetness distance. So I think I'm just going to play around with these settings a little bit, get something like that. Let's come back over here to my water level, bring it down. There we go. I think that looks pretty cool. Let's switch this to my 3D only view so we can really see what we have. And of course, you can always jump over here to your viewer settings and change what our environment map looks like. It's a studio environment. Let's throw on this panorama image here. Maybe turn on my shadows just so we can get an idea of what we're creating. Kind of move my light around here. And this is kind of the result that we're getting here. Now, I've gone through the process, created this material. I started from just a quick texture that was generated for me based on some prompts that I put in. So again, that was just the start of it. And then once that came in, it was tileable. I could then, as the artist, go through and start to add a bunch of filters and processing and really create that material into something else. You can see here, just really basic, adding a couple filters. Now, once this is done, of course, if we had Substance connector applied, I could send this right over to Blender or whatever app. But one thing I want to mention is we could send this into Painter, Stager, Designer, whatever Substance app. But of course, you could export. You have your material settings where I can export in SBSAR, or I could choose something like a PNGen, a Targa, change the settings, and then export, and then I have my material. So that's a quick look at text to texture. Jérémie, back to you.
And next up, we're going to talk about Modeler, and Lydia is here to give us every detail and every update about Modeler. There's a lot of cool stuff coming. I got Lydia.
Hello. Oh my gosh. All right, let's pray to the clicker gods that the clicker will behave.
I know.
OK, so in case you're not familiar with Modeler, it is a next-generation SDF sculpting and scene assembly tool that you can use on both desktop and VR at the same time, which is pretty cool. And to showcase some of the latest features, I will be using this lovely diorama here that was created by Gio Nakpil and Casimir Perez. They are artists on the Substance 3D Evangelism's visual development team. And this scene is called Ronda, and all geometry in the scene is made with Modeler. The materials were made in Painter and animated and rendered in Blender. And so before I talk about model features, I'd like to show a really beautiful 30-second sizzle reel of this scene. hopefully this sounds. That's Rhonda.
Yeah.
So
Gio's here, actually.
yeah, Gio's down
Gio,
there.
take a quick stand up.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, we'll be demoing. There he is. He's right there.
He's wearing an orange beanie. Yeah. So I'm going to show some features in our 1.8 release next, which is available now on Creative Cloud, Steam, and also the MetaQuest store. And while we're showing most of the features on desktop, I want to remind you that all of these features are also in VR, so you can switch back and forth as you need. So the first feature is called Warp Tool Continuous Mode. And so Warp Tool has been in Modeler for quite some time, but now we have a continuous mode that is very similar to the snake hook tool, if you're familiar with other sculpting apps. So continuous mode will warp a shape along a stroke, and it really feels like you are pulling a piece of clay to form organic shapes. And in VR, this is a particularly flowy experience, especially with 6-DoF controllers. And next, we've made a number of surface tool improvements, both around behavior and also performance optimization. So everything should feel a lot butterier now. Butterier, is that a word? More buttery. I can coin the word butterier. So you can see here that Gio is using a pinch crease tool and switching back and forth to refine edges, and then switching to a build-up tool in stroke mode to further refine forms. And then he switches to a flatten tool, which will help polish up the planes between forms and also clean up edges a bit. Just be cool. And then he switches to back to build-up tool in single apply mode. And build-up tool, you can use an alpha texture both in stroke and single apply mode to apply surface detail. So it's pretty powerful. So all of these improvements since 1.8, which came out today, are pretty much filled out our sculpting functionality really, really well. And so these tools not only serve organic modeling, like the ones that you see here by Danny McGrath. He's in our private beta program. But they are also very useful for hard surface modeling, as shown here in this vehicle by Tomi Väisänen. So also in 1.8, we've added a slew of new camera features. You can now create multiple scene cameras with different settings. And you can see top-down, left-right views, and you can also toggle between perspective and orthographic, and also adjust your field of view. There's also all the settings that you need. And then just to show in VR, since this is pretty cool, Gio puts on the VR headset here and then steps inside this tram to further block out shapes. And in VR, we have a new Steadicam option, which steadies the VR preview on the desktop so that it's really easy to make recordings and also present in VR. And then we jump back to render mode, and we've added depth of field settings to our ray tracing view. And you can also output a screenshot PNG of this current view with custom resolution. All right, some export improvements. In this example, Gio chooses the Maya preset and then also quad output, and also uses the adaptive slider, I believe, at 50%. And you can see that the mesh gets tessellated more in areas where there are more detail. And then he finishes up with materials in Painter. So those are just the highlight of some of the key features in 1.8. And next, I want to highlight a couple of features that haven't been released yet, but we're iterating on them right now, and we're planning on releasing them in either the next release or the release after that. So the first is a scene outliner, which if you're familiar with Modeler, we use scoping, and so a lot of times you don't need a visual outliner, but a lot of people have been asking for this, so it does all the things that you want a scene outliner to do. And then if you look at the viewport, the next feature, which is a big one, is SDF primitives. And so unlike the clay layers that Modeler has had for some time, you can add primitives to the scene and Boolean them together, and you can live edit them after the placement. And you can also adjust the soft blend so that they blend together nicely. And so this is super nice for hard surface applications like this tram here. And of course, because now we have both, you can convert your primitive Boolean hierarchy to a destructive clay layer. And you can press just by pressing a button. And then you could apply the usual destructive operations like buildup and warp and smooth and so on. OK, so that's it for sort of features. And I'm going to move on to the next topic. So for the past several months, we've been engaging closely with Adobe research teams. And there's been a lot of amazing work that we want to ship in Modeler. But we've realized that a lot of these features require a lot more iteration and experimentation because of the research nature of the code. And so we've decided to reopen our public beta on Creative Cloud. So people can try out these features and give us feedback while we figure out how to ship them for real. And so a lot of these features can be unstable or not performant and also not production ready. So if you are using Modeler for production, I really suggest that you use the retail build. But if you want to use these new features and give us feedback, please try the beta. So I want to teach a couple of features that are in the beta right now on Creative Cloud, and also a couple that will be coming later. So the first beta feature, you'll see on the right, there's a new asset library panel, which is connected to the Substance assets library. And this experimental feature is a search by shape option, which you can see here. So you rough out a shape, and then while you're doing this, the panel will return the top assets that match that 3D shape. And when you select an asset, it will also replace your rough shape in place. And so you can see here, for the Ronda scene, Geo uses it for a lot of the building features, like this cornice here. And the next one is a feature that we're calling Smart Upres. So recently, we improved our upresing algorithm using trilinear filtering. But this one is actually trained on an AI model trained on procedurally generated SDF shapes. And so you can see here, when you upres, the details and like the clean lines are preserved a lot better. So those are the two that are in the beta right now. And the next two are the ones that we are working on releasing in the beta. So Adobe Research has developed a really powerful physics engine, which we want to use for all sorts of things in Modeler. But the first one we want to do is what we call physics-based layout. And it lets you lay out objects relative to each other with collision for more realistic results. And then the final tease is parametric brush shapes, which research has created a parametric shape editor that an artist internally at Adobe has used to develop all of these parametric brush shapes. And you can see in this Ronda scene, Geo uses the parametric coil shape to create a suspension for the tram. And so when these are ready, we'll be shipping these in the beta. There'll be a set of these parametric shapes that you can use. OK, some final details about the beta. Anyone with an Adobe account can install the beta on Creative Cloud. You will find it in the beta apps section in Creative Cloud, as you can see in the image here. And you do not need a license to any apps to use the beta. So it's totally free. And we also have the beta release for you to try on the Expo floor this Wednesday through Friday. So just look for the Adobe booth. Track down Geo if you want to see some primitives and other features that haven't been released yet. And hopefully you'll be wearing that orange hat. It'll be easy to spot. And after this talk, I will also enable a Modeler beta Discord channel on our Substance server. And so please give us feedback there about all things beta. And also, I had to make this joke. Just pretend I'm wearing a black turtleneck here. So while we're on the topic of betas, I have one more thing. So here is a screenshot of Modeler running on the Mac. And so the Mac is going really well. And we're planning on having a beta program for the Mac later this year. And I'll have a firmer timeline soon. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Okay, everyone. Okay, so just a quick wrap up here of what we have going on here. So we've got, like I said, packed schedule for you, for everyone here today. So starting up right after this, we have tips and tricks in Adobe Substance 3D Painter to make semi-realistic textures. This is going to be from Dardo Studios. We also have with us some of the team members from Remedy. He's going to be talking about Alan Wake 2. We have Larian, who's going to be talking about Baldur's Gate 3. And we also have Ubisoft here talking about Prince of Persia. Now, of course, it wouldn't be our Substance Days without our after party, so of course everyone here is invited. You just need to register, so you can snap the QR code. It'll take you to the register site. We'd love to see you there. Just hang out, have fun, talk Substance in 3D. Also, be sure to come by Wednesday. We're going to be on the booth. It's S157 is where our booth is on the show floor. We'll be doing lots of demos. You'll be able to ask us all kinds of questions and things like that about everything that we covered here today. So we're also doing portfolio reviews again. So if you haven't signed up, you can sign up for portfolio reviews. One thing I will mention is we do have 2 incredible artists with us here today. They were actually artists who signed up for the portfolio reviews last time. Their work was so awesome. We started to work with them. We invited them to come here to GDC. So again, portfolio reviews are great. And please come talk to us about that. Okay, so looking here, we have a lot, like I said earlier, we have a lot of the Substance team here. We've got the PMs. We've got a lot of the Substance team is here to talk to us. We even have the sales team who's here as well. So if you have any questions on licensing or anything like that, they're here to talk to you guys. They're actually right outside. Also, some of the members from the sales team with Michael Tanzillo, some of the technical solutions consultants, they're here as well, can answer technical questions. And so with that, also be sure to check out and get inspired with tips and tricks. We put a lot of stuff on our Behance page. We're doing lots of different articles and things like every month. So you can scan that QR code to get access to the link to the Behance page. So again, we want to thank everyone so much. We have such a packed day. We're kind of rushing here at the end to get to it. But thank you all very much. Again, this is all, we're here because of you. We love the GDC and the community. Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome day. And again, thank you so much.